Welcome to MamaFuel, the podcast that fuels every mama's heart, soul, mind, and body, and hopefully sparks a few dreams along the way. I'm Ann Ferguson, Chief Nurturer and Mama Mentor at the Centered Mama Project, and your host for this podcast. I'll be sharing real, raw, and often funny conversations with beautiful mamas from around the world to remind you that you're not alone and that you're doing amazingly on this wild journey of shepherding small humans as they make their way on our beautiful planet. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of MamaFuel, the podcast. I am Ann Ferguson, your host today and all the days, really, that you decide to listen. And I'm so thrilled to be in your earbuds. Thank you for listening and for keeping us company. And today's guest is not going to disappoint. She is lovely, incredibly intelligent, and has, over the years that I have known her, evolved into what I think she always was, this very warm, really successful, human, imperfect, glorious leader who opens her arms wide and gathers a whole bunch of people around her and takes us all along with her at every single pivot that she makes in her life, in her expression, in her family, in her business. And it is inspiring to watch Laura Husson as she evolves and lives, and thrilling to have her as a friend and mentor. And Laura, thank you for joining us today on the podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yay. Okay, so I always start by asking, what does your life look like right now?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm laughing because we are fresh off the back of pretty much the two craziest months we've had in the past 2 years. And we are going on family vacation, like 6 days from now. Oh my goodness. So we're just like, literally our life right now looks like, what else can we wrap up? What else can we close the loop on so that we can go away and be away? My husband, Chris, is in my company and has been for 5 years now, which I don't know where that's gone.
In a flash, yeah.
It's insane. And the side of the company that he's in is our website agency. So he is lead developer in that. So we are at home, we work together, we're husband and wife, we're all the things. And that has its own interesting dynamics, as I'm sure you can imagine. And then we have two mini humans in our house. Ellen is 9 and Finn is 2.5. And then we also, for some reason, thought it was a great idea to throw a puppy into the mix, right, when Finn was a baby. So we have Ralph, who is sometimes my own podcast co-host. And we have a cat too. So we have quite a lot going on here with everybody's different needs and wants. And my office is right here in the house. So yeah, we're just figuring it all out. I'm currently in the space where I'm realizing that when I take my office out of the house, we all kind of win in that scenario. So we're exploring that as an idea and a potential at the moment.
That's really interesting because I've watched you build your business with Chris, and even though this isn't the point of the podcast for MamaFuel, but your whole life has been built with great intention, right? When we first met, there was Ellen, and Chris also has his own kids who live on the other side of the world. So that adds to the delight of complications. So you've been a single mom. You're often a solo mama. We're often messaging each other back and forth going, 2 weeks to go, 3 weeks to go. And, my husband is away all the time. And so you single mama, solo mama, now married, second baby. And now you're doing, like you say, all the things together. And as you've built this life, it's been so that, at least from the outside, it's looked like it's been so that you could be present for all of the things for both of your kids and continue to grow your family and have this really intentional relationship with Chris. Yeah. And now, again, there's a pivot. It sounds like there's a pivot coming.
There definitely is. Yeah. A pivot, a plot twist, whatever we want to call it. It's not pretty when we get to that stage. And I think that's the important thing that people don't really talk about, is that, people talk about the bravery of pivoting and doing it publicly and bits and pieces like that. But it's actually really unsettling because I can feel it usually before I'm aware of what it's going to be. So it's kind of like the calm before the storm. I can feel like everything kind of goes quiet and I'm like, oh, what's going on? And I get all kind of, ugh. And then I realize, oh, we're about to change something. And I have become aware of my own patterns in years gone by where I would just change things just for the sake of changing things. And now the word intentional that's my word for this year, was everything had to be intentional. And I've done a lot of travel, as you can see if you're watching on the video. These are all my boarding passes from the past year of travel that I've had. I keep behind
There are a
me.
lot. For people who are listening, there are a lot of boarding passes.
There is a lot.
Please check out the YouTube channel. I'll put the link in the show notes.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's been a lot of travel, which has meant Chris has had to really step in a different way in the business to support me so that he could just pick up all the pieces here. He does a lot of that. And so it's really challenging for him to bring the kids home from school and then manage them not coming in the office. If I'm on a call, I'm in the UK, I have a lot of clients in Pacific time zone, and a lot of my flux has been over how do I continue to do this without it being a cost to my family? Because every call that I want to, even if they're being super flexible and get up super early, the earliest they're available is still really 3 p.m., which is school pickup time.
Yeah.
So it means that I'm either doing calls in my evening, which was my new rule for this year I didn't want to be doing, or I'm doing them in the after school zone. And that never feels fun to me either. So me being physically not here takes that away, because the kids are like, okay, she's not here. That's fine. We'll get on with it. So it's really interesting seeing that come, but acknowledging that right now it still feels kind of, it's that thing. I talk about this a lot where we kind of pulsate. I see it and feel it. And I see it in myself and I see it in others too. And when we're about to up level hugely, we ease into it to feel it. It's almost like trying it on, and then we kind of shy away. And it's like we expand and we contract and we expand and we contract. And then suddenly we just expand and we're like, oh, actually, I'm in. And it's not that bad. It's not, as uncomfortable as I thought it would be. And so that's kind of where I am right now, just about to dive in. So.
You mentioned so many ways we could go with this, but you mentioned that you often feel that this is going to come before you actually realize it. So it's a feeling experience, not a cerebral making decisions and changing things like you were saying you used to do for the sake of changing. And I know that tapping into that feeling piece, it has been a huge pivot for you, not just in your business, but in your life. So can you talk a little bit about that pivoting into allowing all of those parts of yourself that you had made small or tried to repress, and what that meant for your life, more even than for your business? Let's start with the life part.
Yeah, well, they're the same thing. This is the thing. I don't believe in balance, firstly. I'm not trying to find balance in my business and life, because my business has been designed and created to support my life. So the two can't be separated, and they can't be at odds with each other, because if they are, and if I place them as in like, can't be in business mode because you're in mum mode now, if I place that kind of shadow on it, that's where the imbalance comes in, when I try and pretend they're not the same thing. So what has happened, it's been, where are we? May 2018. It's been almost 2 years since I went on a trip to California. And it was my first, Finn was 10 months old. And it was my first real, okay, we're going back in. I'm going back in. Chris had done an amazing job at keeping the website agency running. I could feel, again, something stirring in me that was going to bring us in a different direction. I wasn't quite sure what that looked like. I was doing some coaching. I wasn't doing much else, I don't think, other than website stuff at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I went to... Actually, before I went to California, a few weeks before, I went to Turkey on a family holiday. And I booked this ridiculously indulgent, amazing series of massages. Every day I had a different type of massage. And I remember on the last one, I was having the, I don't know the name of it, but where they drip the oil on your forehead, like on your third eye, basically. And in that massage, I don't remember it happening, but I remember coming out of that massage and coming back into like real world and going, oh, I need to buy a domain because I heard this name. The name of my new business came to me in that massage. And I went and I bought the domain and I was like, oh my goodness, it's available. And I was so excited. And so a few weeks later, I went to California and I went into this two-day conference, I think. And I was kind of a little bit arrogant, I guess, walking in because there were a lot of people just beginning. I had been in my business for 8 years by this point, and I was kind of thinking, why am I here? Like, why have I made this trip? Like, I don't need more content. I mean, none of us do, firstly, but I'm here for something and I don't know what it is. And that was also where I discovered that I was an introvert. I didn't know that really about myself before that point because I walked into that room and there were 50 people and a lot of them knew who I was. I had no idea who any of them were. And I found the whole thing really overwhelming and exhausting. And I came out of the room and I just ended up in tears. And it had been emotional anyway, leaving my baby boy. It was the end of our breastfeeding relationship. And there was a lot going on in that moment. And then when I kind of pulled myself together and went back in the room, I was like grounding myself into, you came here for a reason, And so I went back into the room and the host kicked off the event. And the first question he asked and the activity he set us to was, he kept it really simple. I actually just recorded my own podcast episode all about this as the hardest question I've ever had to answer. And he just asked us really gently, what is it that you want? And oh my goodness. And then he just let it sit. And I have this huge sheet of paper. It's still up on my wall in my office. And we had to write out our vision basically for the next 5 years, which is a huge challenge for me because I don't really work by goals or I don't have vision boards. I don't really work in that way. And I didn't know. And it really stopped me in my tracks because I was like, I just felt like a failure. Because I didn't know how to answer that question. I was like answering with the obvious things. I want this and I want that and I want to be happy and well and I want my kids to feel great. But it didn't really feel like my voice. It just felt like, paying lip service to the question. And so I fell apart emotionally. I was crying for pretty much 2 days. And during that time, because we were in amazing Laguna Beach, there were gorgeous sunsets, gorgeous sunrises, plenty of opportunity to just ground and connect into myself. And in that moment, I realized as I drew everything out and I mapped out all the different parts of my business that were going super well for me. And then I was like, this is all great. But isn't it interesting that all this success, and I'm doing air quotes, and I still can't answer the question, what do I want? And what I realized was I wanted to create me being fully me in my business. Like, it was great talking about websites and we're really good at building websites. I can say that without any hang up, that I know that, I know that we do really great work in that department, but it's not me, it's not attached to me, like it's something that I've created and I've shaped, but it's not my personality and what makes me want to jump out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
And so I wrote down on this huge sheet of paper what else was forming part of this vision. And I wrote down Business Beyond Belief because that was the name of my new direction. And I also wrote under that, and it's still up there on the wall, I don't know what this is yet, but I know it's a part of this plan. And that is so interesting because now that is everything. The website side of things pretty much runs without me. And I have stepped fully into Business Beyond Belief, which has all been about me exploring my own journey with mindset, intuition, tuning in, channeling my own guidance, and really going into places that before I would have been, oh gosh, will people think I'm crazy? And speaking that out loud. I remember doing a live stream last summer. It's crazy where this time goes. I can't believe that was almost a year ago, where I shared the story of how I first connected to my own spirit guide and what that had done for me and the growth that had just seen me. I saw everything. All of a sudden, I saw all the things I wanted. And that set a whole new level of momentum into my business because people were ready for that. As you said, most people already knew that that's who I was. And just claiming that and really speaking my truth, it felt like I just relaxed. It felt like instead of trying to where's my ideal customer and how do I talk to them and what are their pain points and trying to shift it all into their hands to make them see what I could do, I just started talking about who I am and what I believe in. And even saying that makes my body just feel like, Ah.
Yeah, I could see your shoulders dropping.
Yeah.
For those of you who aren't watching the video, it's a good idea to go and watch this one. But I'm really curious. I mean, it's been really amazing to watch you, because from the outside, if you look at what was on the tin, you were a teacher, and then you pivoted into online business, and you were selling baby carriers, and then you got to the stage of doing some marketing and some online creation, and then you were building websites, which is what you were doing when we met. And I remember you writing in this business program group that we were jointly in, and I remember it so clearly. You were in New Zealand, and you were writing into the group and saying, "Oh my gosh, we've just had this situation." And remember, you were in New Zealand, and you'd missed your flight, and you needed to rebook, and you didn't have enough cash to rebook your flight, and your daughter was back in the UK, and you put out a call in this massive group to say, "We're actually stuck here, and we'll do a website for you for." It wasn't $5, but
I think it was $500.
It was so inexpensive for the quality that you guys deliver and everything that you do. But I remember you being in that place of like, right, we have this situation. I'm getting back to my daughter, and this is what I need, and who can I help? And that was the first time that I sort of, pricked my human ears up and was like, "Oh, who's she, and what's she doing, and how's it working? And look at how she's just figuring it out." And so on the outside, you have these. Maybe what would be these markers of identifiable, maybe more traditional, I'm air quoting, success.
Yeah.
And then this pivot that you did on a human level was, you know what, actually, I'm a medium. Actually, I hear spirit guides. Actually, it's all about intuition. Actually, and if I was to look at, the ingredients list on the tin before, there would be a big like, wow, what happened there? And I remember you saying at one point that there was also the element of shame was a big thing that was coming in. Like, will I feel ashamed? Will other people mock me? Will they ridicule me? Will they think, like you said, that I'm crazy? Because I'm bringing in this really vital, in the true sense of that word, part of me into my business, but not just in your business. It was also in front of your family and in front of your close friends. And can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think one of the things that I'm really am passionate about, because I have had that experience of working with mamas and being in a workshop and saying, what do you do for fun? And it's just like, there's just nothing there. And then the tears come, right? Because it's this completely earth-shattering realization that I don't even know. I want so badly to be the best mom I can be that I have lost myself so completely that I don't even know what I do for fun anymore.
Yeah. Oh my God.
That is like,
yeah.
And it sounds like when you were in that conference that is what happened. So can you talk a little bit about bringing back those parts of yourself that had been dormant and hadn't had space to play and move and be nourished?
Yeah. So, I mean, I can talk specifically to the first part of your question more easily. I can tap into that and let's see what happens from there. So the last summer, where were we? November 2016, sorry. I enrolled in a program that taught you how to unlock your inner medium, which is what it was called. It was Lindsay Marino's program, Unlock Your Inner Medium. And honestly, two of my friends, my close business friends, were doing it. And they said to me, "We're doing this program." We were all in this other group together and they were like, "We're doing this program. You should do it with us." And I was like, I'm not doing that. And it's become a standing joke because the first thing I said then was, why would I do that? I'm not a medium. And I had no interest. I just dismissed it. And for some reason, it just kept coming back to me because I just kept thinking, well, maybe it'll be just fun. Maybe it'll just be fun to learn how you would tap into that if you were a medium. So maybe I'll check it out. And also there was a bit of me that we'd had an amazing experience together through this other deep transformation that we'd all been through together. And I wanted to go on more of a journey with those girls. So I was like, well, if you're in, I guess I'll figure it out. So I enrolled in this program and the first call, again, the calls were at a really difficult time here in the UK. It was right on the cusp of bedtime. I think Chris was away at the beginning because I remember that the first call I was like, well, I'm clearly not going to make that. I was juggling 2 children at bedtime. I ended up coming into the call 20 minutes late. I was flustered. I thought it would just be one of those group calls where you can mute yourself and just listen in. And I came on, and Lindsay, who was hosting the call, they were holding up a photo, and just the first thing she did was, I hadn't done the homework, hadn't done any of it. And she just sort of said, what do you see? And I was like, oh, and I was really like, not interested in this. Like, don't ask me. And I said, I'll just watch the replay. I'm not really in the headspace for this. She was like, well, that's the best time, because we're not in our heads. She said, that's the best time. What do you see? And I just spilled out all this stuff, which was basically just me not being in my head, saying exactly the first things that came to mind. And it was crazy. This is a very long story that I won't go into, but it was crazy how specific I got about this woman and who she was and the relation she was, and to manage to hook in evidence to prove who she was. And I was like, oh, well, that was kind of fun. And it really changed my mood, because I was like, oh, that was fun. I want to do that again. Like, what else can I guess? That was how I was, what else can I guess about? And so I came off the call and I told my husband about it, but I didn't tell anybody else. I wasn't talking about it publicly. And yet it was totally wowing, because it was like, oh my goodness. But I didn't believe I could do it again. I just thought, well, that was just a crazy set of coincidences. And so we had these calls every week, I think 6 or 8 weeks. And every week, sometimes she would bring strangers in and we would do it for them. And other times it would be different ways of tapping in and pushing out energy and automatic writing and all these different ways of just tuning into what's around us. And every single time it was bang on exactly right. And it took me probably 6 months, maybe even 8 months before I realized it wasn't just luck and it wasn't just guessing and coincidence. I went on her retreat to Florida and still kept telling everybody, we were sat again, why are you all here? And I was like, honestly, I'm here because the house looked amazing. I was like, I'm not a medium like you guys. So I was still saying that. So it became my hashtag, like, oh yeah, I'm not a medium. That was the thing that everyone used to joke about me. And then we moved into August. And what I was doing was, although I'm not a medium, more air quotes, I was doing my own channeled guidance. Every day I was going out. I had a routine. I was walking the dog. I had a bench that I sat on, and I would write and receive guidance for what I was going to do that day, or how I was going to help a client, or whatever was going to be next. And I just decided to talk about that. So I did it. And the first thing I did was a live stream. I didn't really talk to my family about it first. The first thing I did was a live stream from my Facebook page. Actually, lies. That was in my Facebook group. So it's a little bit safe, because those people are, my close community. And the response to it, I just told the story of what I was doing and how I was doing it. And somebody just said, how do we book a session? And I was like, oh, I don't do this. And she was like, well, but you could. And I was like, well, maybe, I'm not sure. I've never tried. And she was like, well, I'd love to book a session. So I put together a link, and I put the link in the comments, and I booked 27 one-on-one sessions. Oh, it was insane. August, I don't work in August typically because holidays. And it was so fun. And again, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm doing all these calls, and every time I'm getting it right. And I was doing this automatic writing before they would come on the call, and then I would do the session. I mean, you had one, so I know that you know that process and how it goes. And it was just every time I came off the call, I was like, wow, maybe I really can do this. Maybe this is it now. And it took a while. Again, it's that pulsating thing of like, could I do it? No, I'm not really. Yeah, could I do it? No, I don't know. And now I just know I don't question it anymore. And so it took me to really pulsate a little while before I was willing to talk to my family, especially my parents. And it was, I don't even have the right word. It was very intimidating, like talking about it. And what I did, my tactic for it was, I just used to carry my oracle cards around with me in my bag. And we went over to my brother's. It was me, my mum, and my brother and his girlfriend. And my bag was sat, and they could see the cards in my bag. And my brother's girlfriend said, I've never done those before. Can you do it for me? And I was like, yeah, sure. And it turned out, just by osmosis, we ended up doing card readings for everybody in the room, including my mum and my brother. Oh. And they were so specific and spot on. And then a few weeks later, we had the same opportunity here in the garden. I ended up doing them for my other brother and his girlfriend. And it was all so specific and right that my mum just last week came to meet me for lunch, saw my cards on the desk and said, "Oh, can you do a reading for me?"
Wow.
And I was like, oh my goodness. And I came home and said to my husband, I said, my mum asked me for a reading. Like, this is
huge.
Really, really huge. And so now it's just, I'm fully out now, it's like, it's not a secret. I don't try and hide it. And we've incorporated it into everything. So now my website clients is one of the things we do is I channel guidance around their design, their strategy. And I've always done that. I just didn't know that's what made us different. So, but now I can actually put a voice to it. All that stuff that I used to struggle with the ideal customer avatar and, just getting it all right has just gone away because now I don't think about attracting the right people. I just speak so truthfully that they appear. I don't have to go showing up in their places and being all strategic about it. I just show up where I want to show up and wherever feels good to me, and they arrive. And that is magical.
How do you integrate that part into your family life with your kids?
Oh, well, it's everything. I mean, it's just everywhere now. It's oozing out of us. I noticed in, again, the past 6 months, this has all been very recent, that I don't know, there's probably somebody listening to this will be like, oh yeah, that's such and such. It's probably something known that loads of people train and know how to do. But I have some kind of energy that flows through my hands. It's not Reiki, I don't think, because it goes on. If they're upset or if they aren't sleeping or whatever, I just know if I put my hands in two specific places on their backs, they just relax. And I've noticed it and I feel it. And I feel myself wanting to do it with other people. I'm like, and I'm like, no, it's not appropriate. So again, I'm in that pulsating stage on that. But my daughter has her own little deck of positive affirmation cards. She knows what I do for my job, again, more air quotes. And she said, like, when she grows up, we've started a mother-daughter journal recently for her and I. And one of the things she said when she grows up, she wants to be a mum and she wants to have a job just like mine. So, and that's been really interesting for her because she talks a lot. She said to me last night, she said, I feel really bad for you that you can't just like stop now and get ready and excited for holiday. And I said, I don't feel bad. I said, I love the work that I do and I love all the clients and people I talk to. They're like my friends. And she was like, people you work with are like your friends. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, she's like, I want that, she said. And I was like, yeah. So she knows, and I don't enforce it on them, and I'm not doing readings for them or intruding into their thoughts, any of that stuff. But I am very aware of their energy, and I'm super aware. And again, another recent realization is that they are both hypersensitive, so completely on that highly sensitive bracket. And that makes so much sense because one of the strongest traits on that is intuition and just feeling other people's things. And my 2.5-year-old is quite something to watch him in action. So I feel really fortunate to have gone on this journey. Perhaps he gave me the journey. I don't know. Perhaps he set it off. But to have gone on that journey before he gets to the stage where he'll start asking questions, because I know that I'll be open-minded enough to help him find what's going to be the right path for him.
That's really interesting. Finding that balance between sharing what it is that you're living and learning and experiencing and giving yourself permission and space and grace to feel into and then claim.
Yeah.
And doing it in all facets of your life. Because I remember you doing that live in the group and talking about your spirit guide and talking about that whole thing. And for people who aren't living that piece of things, that more spiritual, not in an organized religion way, but spiritual and accessing what may be around us.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a like, in your brain. It takes a little bit of, it's like a sharp turn. And, having certainly grown up with none of that kind of mysticism, esoteric thinking, reading, etc., it's a pivot that has enriched certainly my life and changed the conversations that I have with my kids, and obviously has changed the conversations that you have with your kids. And I would love to know on the hypersensitive side of things, how did you come to realize that your kids were hypersensitive? Because hands up, we are all hypersensitive in our family. Highly sensitive is the way that people say it.
Yeah.
Hyper makes it sound bad. Highly sensitive, really highly sensitive. And that often goes with a very high intelligence and an emotional intelligence quotient, if they can measure such a thing, that's really high. And that makes things really complicated often. So how did you realize that this was the situation with your kids?
Do you know, that's such a good question. And it was just a knowing. I didn't know anything about, I do this with lots of things. I didn't know anything about highly sensitive. I didn't even know it was really a thing that people had written books about and all the rest of it. I've heard people talk about it, but I just thought they were describing something rather than labeling. You know, I didn't really understand it was a whole personality type, if you like, or whatever it is. Excuse me. I woke up one morning and I can't remember what had happened, but we talked about dilemmas and decisions. I could feel myself going into that dilemma because I could feel the tension building in my body of like, oh, what do I do? How do I help? I think my daughter's been really anxious. She's been really having a hard time at school. And I was like, I don't know what to do to help her. And because I could feel the dilemma and the stuff coming into me, I just asked. And when I say asked, it sounds like, okay, who did you ask and how did you ask them? But I just put it out there as in, you know, I'm open to receiving whatever information is going to help me right now to make her life easier. And I put that intention out and then I just waited for it to show up. And literally within an hour, somebody had posted in my group talking about their highly sensitive child. And I was like, highly sensitive child. And all of a sudden, as soon as that said, it was like all of this stuff, like I knew what it was. I didn't know what it was still, but it was all this knowing in me. As soon as I read it, I was like, that's my information. And so I Googled about highly sensitive and I saw all these books and all this information. And then I asked a question on Facebook and oh my goodness, the amount of people that said, yes, this is a book to read and this is how it's changed our lives. And I've only read the first couple of chapters of the book because even just going through the list of like items that describe somebody who might be highly sensitive was like a relief because I was like, oh my goodness, I now know there are resources that will help me support her. And so I read the first chapter and even just that has helped. And yeah, she's been so much happier since with my understanding of that. And there's so much more for me to uncover. But here's the other thing I know is that I don't ever need to know everything. Just because I've uncovered that, it's not like I don't need to become the expert now on being a parent to a highly sensitive child. I just trust that the pieces I need are going to present themselves at the times that we need them. And they're both going to need different things at different times, as all children and humans do. But I'm just going to gather the information as I need it. So I'm not going to now make myself the biggest student ever of books and everything else. But I'm open to it and I can see it. So,
what's the book that you've started reading?
The one I've got is The Highly Sensitive Child by Elaine Aron, I think.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's very interesting. And anxiety is something that often is an expression of that high sensitivity. And we have 50% of our junior population is very anxious. Even more recently. So I wonder if there's something in the field, like in the energetic field, that is bringing that anxiety even higher. It's reached a fever pitch and we're looking for ways of supporting her. And as you say, just the simple knowing that, oh yeah, okay. And one, I think there's probably a measure of reassurance because, as you know, you said label, and I felt quite a strong reaction of like, don't want to label, want to label. My oldest, Carolina, is dyslexic, and we were having conversations about attention, and I was really resisting any kind of a label around attention deficit because there is no attention deficit.
Yeah.
But there is a difference in attention, and it's not a deficit, but it's different. And so looking at how can having a name for something provide a space to hold it in, like create some sort of a boundary for this experience that makes it manageable instead of this anxiety that's just bleeding into every aspect of life. Like because I know Ellen would get stressed when you traveled. I'm about to go travel. Well, we both are to the same place. About to go traveling. Yay. And and it's something that I can hear my daughter starting to like, you're going away. When are you going? How long are you going to be gone? And knowing that anxiety is born of this high degree of sensitivity gives me more patience and compassion, and gives her permission to just feel that and talk about it. And then we can kind of move on to other things.
Yeah, totally agree. And I remember even in my time as a teacher that I was the same. Like, why do we have to label everything? Why do they need a diagnosis or what have you? But it really does help in order for not just parents to support their children, but the wider community to support our children, for people to be able to say, because one of the things that I have heard and I identified with a lot in the book was people saying, oh, for goodness sake, pull yourself together or grow up or
just get over it.
Yeah, get over it. Let it go. Don't be such a drama queen, things like that. And I used to always feel I knew even then, I was like, I know this is not what she's doing. I know that she doesn't need to just let go of it, but I didn't know what it was. But even having been able to explain that to my brothers and to my mum, it has helped them to know what language to pick and to understand a bit more about what's going on. So,
yeah, and to find, I think we need sometimes help guideposts to find the way to kindness, and especially, you're saying it helps to have some labels, to have some words, some languaging to put around something. As long as there's a willingness for people to learn, and as long as the education is there, because saying that child has attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, or that child is highly sensitive in many cultures still, and particularly having lived in the UK, which is not the land of expressed feelings, generally speaking, saying to I can imagine that going into a school and saying to the teachers, as you get to know my child for this coming year, know that she is highly sensitive. And that, oh, don't be so sensitive. It's a weakness in many people. And so there's that educational piece and that champion piece, isn't there, about putting yourself forward as the champion of your child and then letting her get on with it, making sure that she's constantly being supported in the best way she can.
And allowing us to make good choices, because this is the thing that my next level that I'm pulsating into at the moment is realizing the truth and the depth of the fact that actually anything is possible. Because I used to think, oh, okay, anything is possible if I what shall I decide that I want to make possible? Whereas now I'm like, actually everything, every social construct, everything that exists actually isn't dictated to us. That doesn't have to be our reality. We can choose again in any moment. And so, if I see something that is having a negative impact on an ongoing basis for my children, I can change that circumstance. I can change their schooling. I can speak to teachers. I can do whatever I need to do in order to, and that's so empowering, because I'm not sat here thinking, oh, what am I going to do? That changes it from a label being something that feels like doom and gloom to a label feeling like something like, okay, this is what we're working with. And now we're going to build an amazing team of support around us that's going to allow my child to live their best life and fulfill whatever dreams they want to set their sights on.
So if someone's listening to us and has heard that, thinks, yeah, well, that's easy for you to say. You have your business and you have a husband at home who's supporting you, and I'm alone and I don't have that support around me. Mindful of time, this will be my penultimate question. What would you say to someone who's in that situation? Because I know that you have been in situations where it's literally playgroup or a bottle of milk and that was your last pound. Like, what would you say to a mom who might be listening to us and who's thinking, yeah, well, easy for you to say.
Yeah, sure. So it's still choices, right? And I'm glad you raised that playgroup or milk situation, because when I was a single mom, when Ellen was 2, I literally remember that morning realizing I had one coin left and not knowing how to choose, do I choose buying milk so we can have cereal tomorrow, or do I choose playgroup, which is now? And I had a choice at that time, and part of me wanted to think, well, we have to eat, playgroup's just fun. It's kind of frivolous and not essential. But I chose playgroup. And what happened was I was met and supported in making that choice because somebody completely by random who had borrowed one of the baby carriers, which my business was about at that time. That business actually, I think that business I was just on the cusp of selling it or I'd just moved it on. I can't remember, but it was difficult. Really the most challenging time I've experienced probably in my life. And this mum who had borrowed a baby carrier so long before was at the baby group and came up to me and handed me £30 and told me that she never gave me back the baby carrier that she borrowed. And so here's the money for it. And I hadn't even, because I had no systems or organization at that time, I had no idea that had even happened. But see, we still have choices. And even then, I knew that I had a choice. And I knew that I didn't have to. When we're in that space and we feel tight, it's really difficult to make the choice that feels fun.
Yes.
And that's the piece, because we feel our first job is to keep everybody safe.
Yeah.
And so keeping people safe is keeping people fed, keeping people literally safe with a roof over their head. Those are the things that come first, and everything else has to come, if it can. And it did feel irresponsible, if you like, in that moment. I remember walking down the hill to the playgroup and just thinking, oh goodness, what next? And literally walking down the hill thinking, well, maybe we'll find a coin as we walk down the hill, like making that into a game.
Yeah.
But just knowing we would be supported and that it would all be okay. And I think that's the thing, is ultimately, if you allow yourself to face the worst case scenario, that is so unlikely to ever be the case that's where we're going. So just trusting and feeling into what feels good in this moment right now, and not worrying about what will that mean for 6 weeks or 6 days or, even later today, because every step we are supported, really, truly.
Yeah. So it's what you have said in a number of different ways throughout this conversation, which is what I would love anyone listening to maybe take away from this conversation, is to give yourself permission to have fun, to give yourself permission to find pleasure, to give yourself permission to make things a game, not in an irresponsible way, not in a way that is going to, not in a way that gaming can be an addiction, not that kind of way, but of actually just giving yourself the space and grace to be playful, even when things are super hard. I had a conversation with Christina Kuzmich, who's the Truth Bomb Mom, and I'm going to be publishing that. It will probably be published by the time I publish our conversation. And she was talking about how she was completely broke and living in a 1-bedroom apartment with her 2 kids on bunk beds, and she was sleeping on the floor beside them because she didn't have 2 coins to rub together. And she would make fun, she would take scissors and cut sandwiches out into fun shapes. And it was like the kids still remember how fun it was to have these picnics. And meanwhile, she was, it was really desperate times.
Yeah. Because it's about the feeling. That's the thing. It's all about the feeling you create, and you can create that in any scenario. Yeah.
And coming from that feeling, you then different choices become apparent when you manage to actually create that feeling.
Yeah.
So last question is, where do you get your MamaFuel?
Well, I put me increasingly at the top of the list. And that has been a big challenge. I used to read about self-care and be like, no, okay, not really interested in that. I do self-care. I go and have my nails done and whatever else. But just last week, because Chris had been in New Zealand, we've had school holidays, we've had children being sick. We've had a crazy couple of months, as I said. And when Chris was on his way back from New Zealand, it was his suggestion. He said, that little place, I have a little apartment that overlooks the sea here on the Isle of Wight where I live. It's absolutely beautiful. The views there, when I've sent pictures to social media, people literally have been like, where are you? Are you in the Bahamas? Are you? I'm like, no, amazing. I'm in the UK. And so Chris said, why don't you just contact them and see if you can book in Monday to Friday when I get back next week and just take some time to yourself. And so I did that. I hosted my own me retreat and took myself there, took the essential ingredients that I wanted in order to just feel good. Took my crystals, took my cards, took some books. I took my computer and my microphone so I could record podcast episodes. And I just took myself away with no agenda, and no guilt of like, oh, I'm away, so I should be filling this time with like stuff. Really, I did very little. Was it a productive week? And I was like, it wasn't productive in terms of like, I was like, oh, I could get 6 podcast episodes recorded. And I didn't. I did 1 right in the last day. But it felt amazing because I had time to myself and I felt recharged. And the difference I notice now is that it's not like I recharge the battery and then I come back and I run it until it's out again and then I go again. It's like I recharge that battery in a different way. I recharge it and I knew that this time was different. I knew this time I'm recharging that battery and this time we're maintaining. We're not recharging and then running out. We're not recharging and running out. We're recharging. It's actually just charging and then we're maintaining because there's no need for any of us to ever get to the point where we feel completely burned out and exhausted. So yeah, me first. And I dropped the dance around the things that I want for myself. So I love when I travel to upgrade my travel experience. And I used to do a lot of sneaky loophole booking. Like I would book an economy flight, keeping an eye on what the upgrade offers would be. And, I would only allow myself to upgrade if it was this much or whatever. And it was a real dance. And I used to be like, oh, exactly what we just talked about. If I pay this now, will I be able to pay this other thing next week or whenever? Or is this irresponsible? And I dropped those dances. And so now I just say yes to the things that sound fun to me and the rest takes care of itself.
That's such a powerful message and a great place to end our conversation. Laura, thank you very much. If people want to find you online, where can they find you?
Sure. So the best place to come and find me currently is either Instagram, and my username on Instagram is totally Laura, or to come on over to my community, because my community is where I hang out. I share my own podcast episodes, and yeah, you can get all the inside scoop. And you can find that. You can find the podcast at businessbeyondbelief.com and the community at businessbeyondbelief.com/yes.
Awesome. I love it. And I will link to all of those in the show notes. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. I have loved talking to you as ever. And I appreciate you sharing your experience and where things have pivoted and moved. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great to be asked the questions because it just takes you out of your usual routine of doing for a moment. So thank you.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, truly. Thanks so much. Talk soon.
That's it for today's episode of MamaFuel, the podcast. Thanks for listening. There's a lot more conversation, sharing, and real mama talk happening in our private Facebook group. To join us, go to www.thecenteredmamaproject.com/Facebook and make sure you say hi when you get there. If you like this episode, or if you know a mama who could use a little mama fuel, I'd love you to share this episode and to rate and leave a review. Every comment helps, and it is always a delight to hear from you. Thanks, and bye for now.